All signs point to this, and as opening night inches closer and closer and the rosters are beginning to become finalized, new reports are starting to surface around what Toronto Maple Leaf is going to get traded and what moves are going to be coming. And what this report entails might surprise you as a trade is on the horizon and is imminent. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. If you're a part of the 70 or so percent who aren't subscribed to the channel, hit the button. It would mean the world to Darius and myself as we're on the road to 13,000 subscribers. You guys have been crushing it, and this is the place to be. Shout out to Darius he's not even home right now, but we wanted to get this second video of the day up for you guys because there's a lot of stuff dropping, and it's going to be crazy for the next week. But Darius, an article dropped surrounding Timothy Liljegren. And in our video earlier today, we kind of touched on the fact how Connor Timmins in practice this morning took Timothy Liljegren's spot, and Liljegren was one of the odd men out. And then this dropped. So you can see this here. This is basically a summarization of the article. I don't love 5 left-handed defensemen in the blue line, but it definitely seems like there's momentum building towards Rafai being the 7th defenseman and Liljegren being the cap casualty once Hakanpää is healthy. Rafai is looking to be a big favorite of the GM and coach, and that's essentially from this article. Basically says that Hakanpää, if he is truly healthy enough to play every night, they might revisit moving Timothy Liljegren's $3 million AAV cap hit. And there was a ton of smoke around moving him at the draft back in June, but the contract he ultimately signed was very heavily front-loaded with 40% of the deal paying out soon. So, Darius, we'll finish up the article in a second. This makes a lot of sense. Again, Rafai has impressed you. He's impressed a lot of Leafs fans. You have Connor Timmins sliding in to the third-line defenseman in practice today. This is no longer precautionary, like super early things. We're about a week and a little bit away, a week and a change away from opening night, and I would not be surprised. And it seems momentum is shifting towards Timothy Liljegren being the odd man out, especially if Hakanpää's healthy, which he is going to be soon.
Yeah, they say he's going to be healthy, right? But you're right. Like, this is something that is happening now, right? Like, this isn't they're still trying things out. This is kind of getting towards what the lineup may look like and what Craig Berube wants, right? Because there's only 2 games left in the preseason. Yeah. He probably wants something close to what's going to be the opening night lineup in that last preseason game later this week. So we're inching closer to that. Like you brought up, Marshall Rafai has looked fantastic to me. Like, he's taken that next step to the point that he is way higher on the depth chart. He's probably a guy you call up, 1 or 2 if somebody gets hurt, depending on handedness and stuff like that, right? And to get to Hakanpää, like, it looks like he's going to be healthy. It looks like they're managing that, right? He's working his way back. He hasn't skated in a while. That's another thing a lot of people, we haven't really touched on is, through the summer, a lot of it was rehab. Now he's finally skating again. He's getting up to speed. So that's encouraging to see. And, the rumor is that he should be healthy enough to play often. Now, where does that leave Timothy Liljegren? Because like we discussed in our video earlier today, and obviously everybody can see through the lines, Timmins is really highly regarded with the coaching staff and Craig Berube right now. It almost like he will be in the opening night lineup and he's not a trade option anymore. It sounds like they want him to be on the team. In comparison to Liljegren, they're both right shots. They both kind of do the same thing. They're both kind of the same player in play styles. And Timmins is heavier, right, than Liljegren. Liljegren put on a lot of weight, but Timmins is heavier. I wonder if there's something to that Craig Berube likes or something in his game that he really likes. But it's pretty interesting. It kind of makes Timothy Liljegren expendable at this point. I wonder if they're, exploring trades. I thought they were this summer anyway. And now that we know for a fact that the contract is front-loaded, that makes it just that much easier to trade him to another team who may want his services. So I wonder if he's the odd man out at this point too. We were kind of kicking tires around, on live streams the last couple of weeks. Like, who's the odd man out? Is it David Kampf? Is it Timothy Liljegren? It looks like maybe it's Timothy Liljegren at this point.
Yeah, and there hasn't been much smoke around David Kampf getting moved, and maybe they want to keep the extra depth at the forwards, whether it's for the 3rd or 4th line, and just see what sticks. Because there is a world where David Kampf has a decent bounce back year. Like, his last year was really bad, but the year before that, he played himself into a contract that, even though it was an overpay, at the time, some team was probably willing to pay it to some degree. Well, Kyle Dubas and the Toronto Maple Leafs were. But you mentioned the front-loaded thing. Yeah, 40% of the 2-year deal has already been paid out in a signing bonus. That was a couple months ago in July. And again, Liljegren, you can see the second part of the article. It's very interesting. Basically, the article says that it should make Liljegren very easy to move if he doesn't mesh with Berube's very different than Sheldon Keefe's north-south system early in the year, which we've discussed. Obviously, a very different structure. The defense is different. That's why they're signing some guys to play alongside and play to Craig Berube's strengths, whether that's Chris Tanev, OEL, Yanni Hakanpää. But Liljegren, like Robertson, is set to be rather disgruntled if he isn't able to land a more significant role this season. And that's another thing that hasn't really been brought up too much that I want to discuss here. There's a world where Timothy Liljegren, he probably signed that contract with knowledge that it's probably easier to trade for him with that contract, but also if he doesn't get into the Toronto Maple Leafs starting lineup on opening night or even factor into that, there's a world where he becomes a little bit disgruntled. And with guys like Marshall Rafai, guys like even Connor Timmins to a degree, being able to replace what Timothy Liljegren can do, Liljegren probably holds the most value out of any of the realistic defensemen that they're going to trade. And if they're trying to use proper asset management, at this point, Liljegren makes the most sense. Something we've been talking about for a while. Yeah, the contract seems like a bit of an overpay, but it does make more sense to have him locked up for 2 years when trading an asset to another team. And I'm sure there's a lot of teams out there who would pay for the upside of a young Timothy Liljegren.
Yeah, it makes it more attractive that he has that second year, right? And the cap hit isn't that bad. He's an NHL defenseman. We know that, but maybe not on a Craig Berube team. It's not looking that way, at least right now. He can still play his way into the lineup. But like you mentioned there, he could be disgruntled, right, with what's going on right now. And it could turn into another Nick Robertson situation from last year where he was sent down because he was the only one who could clear waivers. But obviously he was upset because why should I be sent down if I'm, one of the better players here? I'm just being sent down because of, a paper transaction. So I could see that type of situation happening again. He has nothing to stand on really because of his play, right? We haven't, based on what his ceiling was supposed to be when he was drafted versus what we're seeing right now, it seems like this is the player he's going to be. And he is a good player, right? He's an NHL defenseman, but on a Craig Berube team, just the way he's playing and some of the mistakes he makes, and, the lack of physicality, especially in the playoffs that we've seen, at least in my eyes, I don't know if this is a guy that, Craig Berube, not that he doesn't like, but I wonder if he's thinking, I have a couple options here that I like more than him. So it's going to get interesting. He's very much an option and in play, I think, until the season starts at this point, especially because he makes $3 million. And if the Leafs were to shed that, it makes things a lot easier to figure out what's, the cap situation is going to look like come opening night.
Yeah, and speaking of defense, and let us know in the comments your thoughts on Liljegren. Ben Danford, there's some good news on his front. So they announced that they have assigned Ben Danford, the first-round pick in the latest draft, the Toronto Maple Leafs, to the Oshawa Generals in the OHL. Obviously, tough break, who never really got a chance at camp as he dealt with a concussion in the first week. But the good news here is, obviously, he didn't get a chance. He's not going to play in the preseason for the Maple Leafs, which he probably would have got into a game or two. But his injury, I think, is going to heal itself. It's not something that's super crazy, and he's been assigned to the Oshawa Generals. So it's good to get some sort of update on Ben Danford. It's been kind of crickets since he went down with the injury early in camp here. So Darius, speaking of defensemen who could factor themselves into play, I'd say 2025 and beyond, Ben Danford was sent to the Oshawa Generals, and it was from a concussion that he picked up in the team's rookie camp that we covered, and it was a little bit scary. We're good to go, and I think he'll be good. And luckily, it was not going to say only a concussion, but he's healing well from it.
Yeah, the only thing I was concerned about with this player, like I didn't think he was going to make the team this year, certainly not. I knew that he was going to get sent back to the Oshawa Generals, but I'm a little concerned that he missed an entire training camp and skating with those guys in practice and not getting the experience of getting into those games and the camaraderie of, talking with your teammates who've been in the NHL for years at this point. So, I'm playing with really elite players. So I'm a little bit worried about that. Maybe it's not going to stunt his development or anything, but it's a nice experience to have that he was kind of, stolen away from him because of that concussion. So that's a little upsetting. But listen, he's being sent back to the Oshawa Generals, and the Oshawa Generals this year are going to be a very competitive team. Again, they're going to compete with probably Brampton in the Eastern Conference for the championship there in the OHL. So it's going to be an exciting season to watch him too. And he's close to home for a lot of Leaf fans. So if you want to go see him, he's in Oshawa. It's not too far. So some positives there for sure. And we'll probably see him sometime in the future again.
Yeah, the blue line is looking better than ever, better than it has been in a very long time. And it's crazy that a year ago we were talking about Timothy Liljegren being one of the better up-and-coming defensemen for the Leafs, and now they've upgraded their blue line so much, paired with a lackluster year out of him last year, that he might be factored out of the equation. So let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Do you want Liljegren to be factored out of the equation, or do you think he will fit in Craig Berube's system? Let us know. We'll see you guys tomorrow.